have with me here
Oh,
today?
sorry, John Bedell. Nice
John
to meet you.
Bedell? Greg. Thank you, gentlemen, for taking the time with me.
Oh.
And I appreciate COAS letting me use this beautiful room. What is it that you guys do? What is it that you do? And the name of your company?
Oh, the name of my company is H Visa Solutions, and we work with employers on the H-2A and the H-2B work visa programs. So the H-2A program in itself is a non-immigrant workforce that we bring in legally on a visa, and A is for agriculture, so they do all the agriculture such as picking the berries, dealing with cattle, things like that. Now, H-2B is on the other end of the spectrum, are just your seasonal workers, your laborers. So we'll see those here in Florida and Lakeland working at roofing companies, landscaping companies. Huge for us too in Florida is the hospitality section. You know, all of our resorts, all of Disney,
I never even thought about that.
Yeah, they're the ones that are cleaning our rooms. They are actually on H-2B programs. The restaurants and the specialty cooks are all H-2B workers. And a lot of people don't think about it, but it's a program that allows us to bring in people. They come to the United States for H-2B. They can be here for a maximum of 9 months, and they either return home or go to another employer. And for H-2A, they can be here for a maximum of 10 months, and either go home or come to another employer. Now, one thing is I like to point out too, is when these individuals come here and start working in our communities, they're also spending money in our communities.
Of course.
You know, they're buying food, they're going to, to plays and to movies. They're paying for their stays here. So
The whole community benefits.
The whole community benefits, and it brings more money back into our community as well. So
That's fantastic. And so, how did you start this, if you don't mind me asking?
yeah. Well, after I retired from the military, I worked with U.S. Department of Labor as a wage and hour investigator. So I used to investigate companies for compliance of things like the Fair Labor Standards Act, the Family Medical Leave Act, Migrant Seasonal Worker Protection Act.
Are these recent acts that came through, or have they been around a while?
Oh no, they've been around since the 70s.
Okay, that's the first
Yeah.
I've heard of them.
So
it's been around to help.
Well, it's a compliance thing. It's the federal government stating, well, you probably heard of like the Fair Labor Standards Act. I just don't know the term. I mean, that's what governs who gets paid overtime.
Is that the thing they put on the board when you get newly employed? Okay.
Exactly, yeah. So now when you start doing with the visa programs, then you're having to work with the Immigration Nationality Act. And those regulations and the Fair Labor Standards Act, and if you're doing government contracts, Davis-Bacon or Service Contract Act, all those rules intermix with each other. And one of our key things is compliance. We have, one of the issues is when a federal officer comes in and does a compliance check and they find out that you misclassified an employee, or you didn't pay them overtime correctly, or you don't meet the requirements under the H-2A and the H-2B work visas. All the employers are being reactive. They didn't know, they're trying to fix it. What we're trying to come out there with our businesses that we work with is to be proactive, that be on top of it before it happens. So if a compliance audit does occur, you're 100% ready.
So do they have an issued visa number before they even start the employment?
Oh,
So every employer knows that everybody I have is, all the ducks are in a row and everything's great.
correct. And there's a lot of things that have to happen. So to get a seasonal visa, it takes 4 to 6 months. I've got to get an approval through the Employment and Training Administration. They set the minimum wage, and the reason I say they set the minimum wage on that specific job is because there can never be a U.S. worker that makes less than a visa worker. So any U.S. worker making less than that amount that the federal government has set has to be brought up to that wage overnight.
Do they typically have problems like that, or is it just something that comes across and finding that information?
It's not really a problem. It's just the employers don't know. You think you get workers in, you treat them just like anybody else, but you don't understand all the little intricacies that go with the program itself. So after you get the wage determination, then we got to go to the Department of Labor and we get a temporary employment certification. Once that's completed, then we go to immigrations and get an immigrations petition. And then when we get the immigration petition approved,
Red tape, red tape, red tape.
Yeah.
A lot of red tape.
Then you go to Homeland Security. So these individuals, when they go to the U.S. consulates, are to get vetted. They get background checks done. They do fingerprint background checks at the consulate, and then they're interviewed with a U.S. consulate officer. So once they get through all that, and here's the great thing for employers, is they get a visa, And the company's name is stamped on that visa because they are sponsoring that employee while they're here. And it's actually a violation of the regulations for them to work for any other company, not even a moonlight. They can only work with that one company while they're here.
Yeah, they're like sponsored.
Exactly, so employers don't have to worry about, well, I heard, in a state over, they're paying $2 more an hour. But then they don't, and then a lot of these individuals don't know $2 more an hour, but now that state's got a state tax. So they're losing money, but the employers have a nice, strong, secure work base that comes in on a seasonal basis. Which is really important for us here because so much of Florida is seasonal. When we talk about our resorts and we talk about some of our specialty restaurants, we talk about landscaping or roofing or construction.
I was taking my son to work the other day,
Mhm.
and the strawberry field, this is the harvest season, obviously.
Yep.
And I said, man, and you see the half a buzz, I'm like, man, they're working hard.
Oh.
I couldn't do it.
Oh, hard work?
It's real hard work.
Back in my 20s maybe.
Yeah, same here.
But no, not now.
So it benefits the community. Does the employer get like a tax benefit, or just they save money on labor?
One thing I want to say is that the program is not a cheap program. There are fees you have to pay to the Department of Homeland Security just to do the application. What the employer does get is a strong, stable workforce. As like you were saying about the strawberries, they only have a small window. If they don't have the workers there, it all rots. Now, when you're looking at Polk County in general, 16% of our income comes from the farmers. And then you have the transportation, because we're on the I-4 corridor, that's another large amount of jobs that are out there. So we depend on these workers to come in. And the key thing, what we're trying to help employers with is not only do we do the entire application process, but we try to make sure they stay in compliance, which is a huge part of it. A lot of people can just, do the application and get it approved or get it denied, but it's after the fact when the workers are here. With little things, like when you do an application, it's set by the state and county. So I've had clients say, I'd like to move them over to this county. Well, that county's not on your certification, so you cannot move them. They've got to stay where they're certified. Little things like that, like the wage rates. They don't know that they have to make less than the U.S. workers. Or their paycheck stubs. On the H-2B and H-2A program, both, the employer has to have the EIN number placed on the paycheck stub. Those little things is what gets people
You'd
in trouble.
mentioned earlier about when you don't comply that you can get in trouble.
Oh,
Can you
yes.
tell me about that?
Well, there was just, like I said, there was an article in the Miami Herald from the November 24th investigation conducted by the U.S. Department of Labor. And before violations of the Fair Labor Standards Act and the H-2A program, it was like $4.3 million in back wages, fines, and penalties that had to occur. I've personally done investigations where companies owe $400,000 or $500,000 in back wages simply because small businesses cannot afford that $80,000 to $100,000 a year HR person.
Whoa.
So, and to be able to understand all these regulations that are going on, you have to. So it's very, very difficult for smaller employers to be able to understand that. So what we offer our employers is an alternative as a consultant, so we can go in and review their documents, make sure it's correct. If they're doing their H-2A, make sure all their documents are finished, as well as H-2B. Actually, at the end of each season, my clients get what I call an audit package. So it's a binder, and everything, if the Department of Labor or Homeland Security were to walk into your company, everything they would ask for is one little binder. You just hand it to them and let us know. And then they call me and I'll come in and talk as well to help them out with the process. Our biggest thing is service after a sale. I mean, I know that this compliance issue is becoming such a big issue. You can Google any Department of Labor investigation and you'll find, 800,000, millions of dollars in back wages, civil money to people.
This is an ongoing thing that's constant?
Ongoing and constant. So, my goal is to make sure to help employers, especially the mid-sized and smaller employers who need this kind of help. I mean, as a small business owner myself, and I've been doing this over 10 years now, you finally say, oh, I made it. I'm over the 5-year mark. I'm actually making money. I can pay my mortgage, and then all of a sudden the compliance starts coming in. You have overtime and minimum wage and misclassifications. Like, let's use it for example as a 1099. A lot of people like to use independent contractors, but then they're misclassified. because under the Fair Labor Standards Act, there are certain things that have to happen to be an independent contractor. The employer can't dictate their hours. They gotta be able to work with other people, have their own business cards, and, and basically doesn't control. So it's no different if you hired a roofer to go roof your house. They show up when they want to and they leave. What we see is some employers, not that they're doing it on purpose, they just don't know, say, okay, yeah, I'm gonna put you as an independent contractor, but I need you here from 8 to 5 to answer the phone. Well, you just dictated his hours, so now that person just became a W-2. So where that hurts is, you'll find out that sometimes the 1099s are not being paid minimum wage, and they're definitely not being paid overtime. So the Department of Labor will come in, misclassify them, calculate back wages, assess civil money penalties and fines, and then you have to hand that worker a check for all the time that you missed.
That would hurt. We just finally got into the money, and now you got this.
Exactly, now the compliance thing. So instead of, paying somebody 60, 70, 80,000 a year to run your HR, smaller organizations can use us, not only just with the visa workers, but with the Fair Labor Standards Act, to help guide them and write policies for them and their handbooks and things of that nature.
Curious question. You know how there's these businesses that have laborers all the time?
Mhm.
Oh, we need this done at this time, so they just hire why don't they have a assistant like your company,
Yeah.
have a pool of laborers that can go to, we need you here, we need you there, we need you that. Is that the government doing that on purpose?
No, it's, okay, so when you're talking about those kind of positions, what we're looking at is, for the employers, is stability. So when you use the H-2A and H-2B program, you can bring the same people in every year.
Sure.
But when you're using it, when you go to a labor pool, you don't know who you're gonna get. So every time somebody new comes in, you gotta retrain them, which costs money. And that's why, and the H-2A and H-2B program also, decreases your turnover rate because you don't have, these people are already trained going.
Sure.
Now, with that being said though, with the H-2A and H-2B program, there's a requirement for the employers to advertise, because we have to demonstrate to the U.S. Department of Labor and Homeland Security that there are not enough U.S. workers to do the job and there are none available to do the job. So with a U.S. worker that's willing and able to work and is qualified under, and they apply under the H-2A or H-2B program as a U.S. worker, that employer either has to hire them or they have to give a reason that we send up to the Department of Labor and saying, I'm not hiring this person because of this reason. For example, it's a truck driving position and the person's got 3 DUIs. Okay, that's a reason why you can't hire them.
You gotta vet them.
Right. So if they're willing, able to work, you have to hire them over a visa worker. So it's not an automatic thing. So, and it's actually, that's, to me, in my opinion, it's a good thing because, one, we're gonna employ the U.S. workers first, but two, a lot of those times, what we see is the U.S. employer finds that diamond in the rough, that person that would have never applied. Now, instead of a seasonal worker, they just got themselves a full-time employee that can progress up. And not only is our goal with the visas, but it's also my goal with the education, because now if we can work with the universities, we need to start adding degrees out there, for compliance. Human resources should
create a whole
new thing, with adding the visa work implementation for, let's say, an HR farming position, a degree. And that creates higher paying jobs for us right here in Lakeland, since a big part of it. And now we're keeping higher paying jobs in Lakeland, and we're keeping Lakeland money in Lakeland. And as small businesses, we like to donate to different causes, such as like giving scholarships to young athletes, whether you're doing debate or football, it doesn't matter. But if the young children understand that this is a good process and this is how they can excel, and they're right with the right people doing the right things, we're going to see our young children who are going to take over when we retire, go on. So we'll be a big part of that. So, and as I get older, I'm looking at how am I going to leave a legacy versus, my family a house.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Well, how did you get started, and what made you decide to?
The reason I got started was after hundreds of investigations that I did, and for compliance and audit, what I realized was, I would say 95% of the employers I work with wants to do it right, they just don't know how. and there really was no avenue for them to learn this and try to run a business. And it's very difficult, and I know from personal experience, because I wouldn't recommend this to my worst enemy, but I went to law school full-time and ran this company full-time. Okay, not the smartest thing I ever did.
Full boat.
Yeah, so it's, and I was a non-traditional student. I had a business, I had employees, I had a mortgage, I got a wife, I got a kids. So thank God for my wife, she's very, very patient woman. But it's just so
You had some
much.
experience, and then you've seen an emptiness or a spot where you could help the community at the same time as help the people.
Right,
That's
exactly.
fantastic.
And that was a key thing for me too, is working with individuals and companies to help them grow versus being there. That's one thing I didn't like about being a federal officer, because I always put the employers on the reactive track, and I'm always thinking to myself, how can we make this proactive for them? Well, unfortunately, there's really not a lot of programs. I know the Department of Labor does do some outreach, but they're few far in between. So how can we help employers? So working with employers and using my word of mouth, we help them climb to that next step. As we work with our clients, to me, they're really not just clients, they're partners. My clients call me all the time, 6, 7 o'clock at night. What are we doing? What's going on? All right, we'll get this figured out. But and to me personally, not only am I building my company, but I'm building our local companies, which is drilling more money into the economy, and I hope the more employers make, the more we can start giving back, and help develop these trends in these educations, and not just like human resources, but I see a lot of people starting to move towards the trades, which the trades are very important right now. I have 2 older children. My daughter is 26, she's a nurse. My son's 23. He worked construction, both different ends of the spectrum, both have great work ethic, and they're both successful. Really proud of them, because I got a 23 and 26-year-old that have already bought their own houses.
Wow.
So it's teaching that work ethic and teaching that belief of that it's okay to get knocked down, because that's what life is going to do to you. But now let's teach them how to get back up and keep moving forward. And we do that through education, we do that through local programs, and we do that through our local businesses and our business leaders to push these kinds of ideas.
And hopefully the schools,
Yes.
the universities in the future. What's the name of your company?
H Visa Solutions.
H Visa Solutions.
Correct. So
And-
H is the type of visas we do, H2A and H2B, and then it's a visa.
And what's your website address?
It's www.hvisasolutions.com.
Visa, Visa solutions.com.
Correct.
And this is primarily for employers to go, to be on the right track, to use the laborers.
Correct. And we do, and it's nice to bring them in. It takes, I know we've got this whole issue going on with whether you want to call them undocumented or illegal, any way you want to look at it. This is a way to bring them in on a legal basis, and it does give them a pathway as well. So if over time they want to apply for like an EB3 visa, which is your permanent visa, it's a track that they can do it. You've been coming in on the H2A, H2B visas on your seasons for the next 3 or 4 years. You're already showing the government that you're here to work and not break the rules, because you're following the rules already. So it helps you in your process as well.
That's one. And just out of curiosity, I know that the big theme parks over in there, they bring in under H something, and I don't know what that is. What is that?
The H2Bs.
That's the H2B. So it is the same.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Now there's several different ones. So your H2A is your agriculture, your H2B is your laborers. Now your H1Bs are going to be your professionals, your doctors and
Oh,
engineers.
didn't even know that.
Yep. And
Software engineers and that
Yep.
kind of thing.
And then
Okay.
H1Cs are like your nurses and med techs and things like that. So.
Yeah, I have my doctor at the VA. I think she said something about that, and
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't know that.
She's
Okay.
on that would be an H1B. Yeah.
H1B.
So.
Well, fantastic. So you recommend any employer
Mhm.
who is in the market to go to your website, fill out some general information, and you'll get in contact with them?
Yeah.
What happens is these people who come to the United States to work, they come to do that. They don't, they're never sick, they're never late, they're always,
The work ethic is
Yeah.
solid.
Work ethic is high, because when they work and they send that money home, you know, a few dollars turns into a lot of money back home, and they wanna do good work so they can come back next year and do it over.
And their friends that are receiving money, growing up, getting
Mhm.
older,
Yep.
bring them as well.
Exactly, and yeah, so any employer that's got a seasonal workload, and there's not very many employers that don't have a seasonal need. We just have to do the research and the evidence, and evidence to show that they're seasonal. I'll give you an example. I actually got a nail salon approved for a seasonal visa in Jupiter, Florida.
Nail salon.
So, but if you think about it, during the winter months, you've got, in Florida anyways, you've got more weddings, you know, you've got the holidays, so you actually can see a peak. Your business doesn't have to completely shut down. What we have to show is a bell curve, you know, so during those months of all the weddings and boat cruises and holidays and things, you'll see a peak in those kind of industries because people are preparing for those kind of things. So yeah, you can get that done. I've got a Dairy Queen one time approved in Wyoming. So, you know, but it was in the middle of Wyoming by Yellowstone Park. But guess what? You get 4 or 5 feet of snow up there, the roads become impassable. So it is seasonal because there's nobody in tourism. Tourism is huge because, especially for us in Florida, because that is a big part of our economy, and we've got all the beaches and all the resorts that need these HTB workers to come in. You know?
One final question, if you don't mind me asking, just popped in my head. What if you're an employer and you've got some employees and you're scared to comply? They can come to you and you work with them to get them to comply. Because I imagine, like your taxes, I'm too scared to go file my back taxes because of what's going to be. Can you help in that area?
Well, with that area, what I think you're talking about was individuals who are out of status is a good word for it.
Okay.
Where their visas are
Or the
expired,
employer.
or the employer. That then becomes a legal issue. So I would tell you, on this kind of issue, you need to go speak to an immigration's attorney to figure out how you want to approach that. I can't give you any legal advice on that because it's just not my expertise, and I haven't passed the bar yet, so I'm not an attorney. So,
Yeah, that's great advice, though.
Yeah.
That's great advice.
Yeah. So you want to go get the expert that's going to know it. I'm always a big advocate of staying in your lane. I'm not going to go try and sell a house. So if you have an issue where an individual's out of status, then you need to go see an immigration's attorney and work out those. We got some great ones here. I did my internship with an attorney out of Plant City, so they're really knowledgeable. So on that issue, yeah, you'd need to seek legal advice on that one.
That's fantastic. Any other advice we could give?
Oh, if you need some help, feel free to give us a call. Our phone number is 863-644-6499, or visit our website at hvisasolutions.com. And we'll just come out and talk to you and let you know, hey, this could be an issue. You do need workers. How do we prove this? And I'm also going to be honest with you and say, you're a welding company, you do this year round, your payroll is flat, you're not going to qualify for the program. One thing I won't do is take money from somebody when I know they're not going to qualify.
So there is a charge if you want to get an evaluation?
The initial evaluation, just talking to them, no.
Okay.
But once we start getting into the contracts and I start submitting applications to the federal agencies, and basically if I have to put my staff to work, then it's time to start charging.
That's fantastic. Well, I appreciate your gentleman's time very much.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Have a fantastic day.